Today, I'm going to walk you through our process of a full broadcast epoxy flake floor in this new construction garage. So follow along and watch this boring, stained, dirty, unprotected concrete become an absolute masterpiece. Here is a real quick snapshot of some of our equipment. This is our floor grinder, and then behind it, we have 2 vacuums for a 95% dustless system. Some more of our equipment, and I will touch on that white trailer in a later video. We grind the floor to create a porous surface. The epoxy is only as good as what you applied onto, so by creating a porous surface, we're ensuring the epoxy will adhere well and not peel in the future. We hand grind all of the edges to get every aspect of the surface, and then of course use the floor grinder for the remaining areas. As you saw in the previous clip, both grinders, the hand grinder and the floor grinder, are attached to our vacuums, which allows us to have a mostly dustless system when preparing your floor. However, some dust does get left behind, so we take those vacuums and vacuum the floor 2 to 3 times in both directions to take up the remaining debris that is left. And of course, we're going to get every crevice, including your expansion joints and the edges around the garage, as you see Will and Robert doing here. It's very common for concrete to have cracks or holes like this, regardless of the age. Stay tuned for a later video because I'm going to talk about new construction homes and the type of concrete I'm seeing in them. We repair these imperfections with the proper crack filler that still allows adherence of the epoxy after we grind the remaining crack filler from the surface. This is the finished result when the crack filler has dried and we grinded it to create a level surface with the concrete. This section of the floor is called the stem wall. We offer a couple different options on coating this, and this customer chose to have it stained. We do this before applying the epoxy to ensure nothing drips on the finished floor, and of course we don't want to be walking on a freshly coated floor. Next, we start preparing the products to be placed on the floor. You can see we have our buckets of flake over there and staging ready to be broadcasted once the epoxy is on the floor. And during this time, I'll just show you, we always have our equipment ready. We've got our roller, edging brush, or squeegee. There's a nice snapshot of that floor ready for epoxy. And mixing the products is definitely like a science experiment. There's 2 products that get mixed together in order to activate the epoxy, and they need to be mixed for a certain amount of time. Once that time is up, we have another time frame to get the epoxy on the floor before it starts curing. All right, so we've got some of the epoxy on the floor. Robert is edging, you can see in the back, and Will is spreading that epoxy evenly with the squeegee to ensure that we get a nice level coating on that concrete. Once edging is done and squeegeeing is done, we use a roller to do what's called back rolling. So we roll in both directions to ensure that we get rid of any of the lines left back behind from the squeegee and to create a super level seamless surface. Next, we grab those buckets of flake and we start broadcasting them into the wet epoxy. We do full broadcast floors, which means you're going to get 100% flake coverage. While the floor cures, the flake is going to stick into the epoxy, and then we're going to come back and clean up the remaining amount of flake in the next clip. So once the floor is cured, we go in and we remove that excess flake that's on top of the cured floor. We use a leaf blower to blow it into a corner, and then we sweep up the extra product. Sometimes the flake does get into places we don't mean it to since we broadcast it high for that 100% coverage. So we will go ahead and clean out the areas it might be hiding to ensure we get as much of the excess product out as possible. The next step in the process is scraping the flake. So we do this because when the flake gets broadcasted into the wet epoxy, it's just going to stick however it landed. So sometimes there's going to be some pointy spots or some high spots, and we want to make sure we get rid of those so you have a nice smooth floor. We scrape the floor in both directions to ensure we get the whole surface, and then we go ahead and vacuum and get ready for top coat. We vacuum after scraping to make sure we get rid of any little pieces of flake that might be left behind after breaking them off from the cured floor. So remember when I said that mixing the epoxy was like a science experiment? Well, the polysportic top coat is no different. We use a UV stable, antibacterial, non-slip top coat, and it takes 2 parts, just like the epoxy, to mix together and activate those products. They need to be mixed for a certain amount of time. And then, of course, once they're mixed, we have a time frame to get it on the floor before it starts to cure. So once that top coat is ready, we pour it on the floor and then we roll it out to create a smooth, level surface. Just like the epoxy, we do this in both directions to ensure that there's no roller marks or any lines in your top coat and you have a nice, glossy, finished floor. And now what you've been waiting for, the finished product. You have here a beautiful protected concrete floor. It's stain resistant, non-slip, super easy to clean. And this is a space that you can utilize for whatever your heart desires. Maybe you want to have an at-home gym. You can put it in the garage. Maybe you just want a man cave or even somewhere to sit back with the neighbors while the kids play in the front yard. It is just such a great flooring system that we really believe a lot of people can benefit from. If you're interested in learning more about epoxy flooring, reach out to us, tell us about your project, and then we can schedule a free estimate appointment for you. Be sure to also like and subscribe to our page where we're going to have more videos on anything and everything epoxy flooring. Thank you so much for watching, and we cannot wait to help you make your epoxy flooring dreams come true.